Hello everybody and welcome back to X-Plane 11. My name is Micah and today I'm going to be showing you how to do a RNAV approach. Today I'll be doing it into Seattle. Now there's a lot of terminology that goes into an RNAV that I'm going to want to cover first off, and then we're going to look at the charts so you can see the difference between two different types of RNAV approaches, and then we're actually going to get into the actual approach in the aircraft. So you'll see these pop up on screen here with the charts when I get into them. But first, let's cover some terminology. So you're going to hear me say RNAV, which stands for Area Navigation, GNSS, or GPS, Global Navigation Satellite Systems, or Global Positioning System, as some people familiarize themselves with. LPV, which stands for Localizer Performance with Vertical Guidance. WAAS, Wide Area Augmentation System. And RNP, Required Navigation Performance. Now, RNAV, of course, it stands for Air Navigation. What that basically is a form of regulations and technology that allows an aircraft to position itself in the 3D space that is the air. That's the X, Y, and Z axis. It is somewhat accurate. It's not super accurate. Generally, if your LNAV and VNAV activated on your aircraft, you're generally going to be around, 1 nautical mile or so where you're supposed to be. GNSS, this is the Global Positioning System or Global Navigation Satellite System. That is your satellites, right? Those are your GPSs like you have on your phone, your car, something like that. And they're beaming down information to you to allow you to actually put yourself in a certain position in the 3D space that is the air. LPV, Localized Performance with Vertical Guidance. This is like an add-on procedure that was developed by the FAA back in 2003. Basically, what it does is it gives you that precision approach without actually having to use the ILS, without having to use the instrument landing system, not having those radio beams coming up from the Earth to your aircraft. With that being said, though, it's not actually considered a precision approach, so you can't fly it in like Category 3 conditions and things like that. It's still considered an RNAV approach. Inside of that LPV uses the Wide Area Augmentation System, which again developed back 2003 by the FAA. Basically what it is, it's a bunch of ground-based stations, similar to like what you would think like a VOR, but it's not a VOR. It's a station that has a satellite terminal and transmitter, and what it's doing is it's reading information from the satellites saying, hey, this is where you are. And then the certain ground station goes, actually, that's not where I am. I'm actually right here. And what that is basically fixing any type of discrepancies, any deviations. The satellites are saying where these stations are. That all information gets sent to a master station that then sends up a transmission to the satellite saying every 5 seconds now saying that, hey, these are actually where those positions are. You said they were here, but they're actually here. And the satellite goes, okay, I'll make the corrections inside of my system, and I'll send information down to all of my, clients who are all the different aircraft and so forth, saying this is actually where you are. Now, the cool thing about the WAS, the Wide Area Augmentation System, it enables you to fly within 25 feet of where you actually are. So your point of reference is within 25 feet, which is pretty phenomenal for not having any type of radio beacons or anything like that. So yes, we'll get into that in a second. RNP, this is Required Navigation Performance. Basically, this is a bunch of different systems all working together to tell you exactly how your aircraft is performing. It's where it's positioned in the world, how the engines are performing, everything, where the terrain is, etc. All of it's all come together to give you a position inside of the 3D space that is the air. Now, an RNP approach and a LPV approach. Those are the two approaches that we're going to cover today. First, we'll start off with the RNP approach, and you guys should see the the chart pop up on your screen at this point. We're going to start at the top here, and we're going to go down. First thing we're going to read here is the information regarding the RNP, right? We're looking at the RNAV RNP Zulu runway 16 Charlie, which is the center in Seattle Tacoma International, which is what we'll be landing on today. It states for uncompensated Barrow VNAV systems, procedure not applicable below 6 degrees Celsius or above 54 degrees Celsius. So what that is saying is that if you don't have an uncompensated barometric device, and that means, barometric, we're using inches of mercury in a barometric device, so you're actually using mercury to determine the temperature. And once you get below 6 degrees Celsius or above 54 degrees Celsius, your accuracy starts going off. And so if you don't have a compensated barometric device in order to compensate for that, you can't fly this approach. Now, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure the 737 has a compensated baro, so you should be fine on that. It says GPS required, so you have to have a GPS installed on board. See additional requirements on JSON information page. That we're not going to go into, but there's a lot of different requirements for this approach. ALS, increase RNP 0.12 all cats visibility to RVR 5200 and increase RNP 030 all cats visible to 1/3/8 statute miles. So what that is basically saying is RNP, when it's talking about levels here, like RNP 0.12 and RNP 0.30, that is the accuracy of your RNP system at the time. And if you are in CATS visibility to basically 5,200 feet, if you can only see 5,200 feet, you have to have RNP of 0.12. If you could see, if you could see 1 3/8 miles, statute miles, then you can do RNP 0.30. Now, all this is a lot of information that I know can get confusing really fast, especially if you're new here. So we're going to move on now to the actual chart page itself, the actual visualization here. We're going to be using the Griffey arrival point. Now, we're not going to be using RNP, but we'll just go through it as if we would use an RNP approach here. The Griffey arrival point, you'll notice that it says RNP 0.30, so you have to have at least 0.30 on your RNP in order to fly this approach. You would take this at a 137 azimuth to the Magnum fix, then you would take 164 all the way into the runway. Now, this is all being done obviously through your vertical and lateral navigation systems, and all that combined with RNP to give you a good approach. Now, if we scroll down even more, you're going to see nice large letters that say authorization required. All RNP approaches require an authorization to fly. So you have to get authorized to fly this approach by the controllers. If you don't get authorized to fly this approach and you do fly this approach, you will get in serious trouble. So RNP requires authorization, so you have to ask for an RNP approach, and they have to give you that RNP approach. Now, again, you'll see we talked about categories above. Well, now we're going to see down here the actual categories: Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, and Delta, and you're going to see the basically what your what do you call it? Decision altitude. That's what I'm trying to say. Whew, words today. And you'll see it in feet, and you'll see it in meters here. So 758 feet, 834 feet, etc. if you have RNP 0.12 or 0.30. All right, so that's basically what we're going to cover with the RNP. Now we're going to move on to the RNAV GPS Yankee runway 16 center. Now we are going to be using the LPV on this arrival, and I'll explain that in just a second. If you're just using LNAV and VNAV, just a typical RNAV, you could also run this approach. So whether you're using LPV or not, you can run this approach. And this is what we'll be running today. So again, reading the information here, it says for uncompensated baro VNAV systems, LNAV, VNAV not applicable below 6 degrees Celsius or above 54 degrees Celsius, just like we saw in the RNP. DME, RNP 0.3 not applicable for INOP, ALS, increase VNAV CATS Charlie Delta visibility to 1 3/8. See additional requirements in JSON information page. And again, you're pretty much not going to have to worry about any of that unless you're flying like other aircraft that may not be as technologically advanced. So let's say you're flying a Cessna 172 with just a Garmin GPS in there, then you're going to have to worry about flying these approaches. All right. Looking at the actual chart itself, again, we're going to be coming off Griffey at 6,000 feet, flying 137, 4,000 on the Magnum, and then it's 164 all the way in to the runway. Scrolling down more, you're going to see a little bit more information than what you saw on the last chart here. You're going to see different categories, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, but you're also going to see LPV, LNAV, VNAV, LNAV, and then circling. We're not going to worry about circling right now. That's a whole different procedure. But so let's look at first the LNAV MDA. So if you just have a lateral navigation, you don't have vertical navigation on board, your decision altitude is 920 feet, or 490 meters. If you have LNAV and VNAV on board, your decision height will be 840 feet, or 410 meters. If you have LPV, so this is again, the localized performance with vertical guidance system installed, then you can fly all the way down to 630 feet for your minimums. And that is, of course, what we're going to be using today. Now, with all that being said, we can get back into the aircraft itself, and we're going to get everything set up for the descent and the approach into Seattle. Now, I am paused right now because the top descent is less than 20 miles away. And if you recall on the chart here, our decision altitude is 630 feet, but our point of intercepting the quote-unquote glide slope, there's no glide slope here, but the final fix on the approach is going to be SODO, which was at 1,900 feet. So I'm going to reduce my altitude from 19,000 to 1,900 feet to get that set up here. So I'm going to go ahead and set that here, 1,900 feet. Next, what I'm going to do, and again, if you're flying a longer cruise period of time, you'd be able to do this beforehand. I'm just have to do it at pause since I'm so close to the top of descent. Next, I'm going to set my minimums to the minimums of LPV. Now, with that being said, I'm going to actually set my minimums 40 feet above what is actually stated in the chart of 630. So I'm going to set it 670. And the reason why I do that is because if we have to do a go around, it's going to take a little bit of time and effort to actually get the aircraft increasing altitude. So you're probably going to lose about 40 feet if you hit it at the right time before you actually start climbing again. So you want to put it about 40 feet above that point of reference, that minimums, because you cannot go below the minimums. If you do, you violate FAA regulations and you get in trouble. So put it about 40 feet above and you should be just fine. With the altimeter right now, it should be, I think it's 2982 is what we're at. So we'll adjust that as we get there before we descend through 18,000 feet. Now, I didn't show you this on the chart, I will in a second, but with the LPV, there is an actual quote-unquote channel that you would use with the GPS. And if we go down here into the approach reference on the FMC, you'll notice right here where it says RNAV 16 Center Yankee, right? Then / course. So if we look here, we actually are getting a channel for that RNAV 61010. R16 Charlie Yankee 165. So we are on the 16 Center Yankee approach. Course will be 165, and our little WAS channel is 61010. Now that information can be found on your charts as well. Now, going back to the chart here, you see very far upper left-hand corner, you'll see WAS channel 61010. You want to make sure that WAS channel matches the WAS channel that is being shown in your FMC. If it is, great, you're ready to use the LPV. If it's not, you may just have to use the LNAV and VNAV approach instead of the LPV approach. But we'll be using the LPV approach, so we're set up good. Now, I do want to show you this on your main flight display. You'll notice that the RNP is showing up 1.00 and AMP is 0.05. AMP, I can't exactly remember what that is. That's another addition to RNP, but basically you're going to be looking at this RNP number. We're 1.00, so we don't have that super close, accuracy of 0.30 to fly that RNP approach. But we do have LPV, and LPV will allow us to fly even closer and greater approach. So we're going to be flying the RNAV GPS LPV approach today. All right, let's go ahead and unpause here. Now let's go ahead and set our altimeter to 29.82, which will be the approach altimeter. Now there is no specific, reference that we have to input into our navigational radios like you would on the ILS. But if you wanted to, say, throw in the ILS frequency anyway, just in case, you could do that. If you wanted to throw in, say an ADF for the airport, you could do that as well, or a VOR in the navigation. Whatever you like to do as a backup system, you're more than welcome to do that. I'm not going to worry about that again because I'm just worried about flying the RNAV LPV approach. Now we're going to set our heading to 164, and that's a backup, again, to get us online with the runway. All we're looking to do right now is to get a nice, good approach into Seattle. So just a brief summarization, whenever you're doing a RNAV and VNAV approach, the things that you want to set is the MCP altitude. Now, if you don't know, MCP stands for Mode Control Panel, which is this panel right here. You want to set this altitude to the final approach fix. This is, of course, if ATC is not online or you're flying offline and they have not given you an assigned altitude. They may give you a descend to 4,000 or something like that. Then you would put that in. But if you're not flying, no ATC is available, or you're offline, you're going to put the final fix into your altitude here. You're going to set your courses to your final course, heading to your final course as well. Now you'll notice that my course says 165 here, but on the chart it's 164. So there are some deviations that do happen. I always go off the charts more than I go off the FMC. If the chart says 164, I'm going to put in 164. So that's just what I do. I don't know if that's how you're supposed to do it, but if there's a difference, I always go with the charts. And of course, make sure the charts are up to date and not some old chart that's, out of date and doesn't have the correct deviations in there and stuff. Anyway, so altitude, course, heading, and you want to make sure your WAS number is, or channel is the correct WAS channel. And you've gone through all of your points on your arrival and approach to ensure that you have the proper arrival and approach. So with that being said, we're about to start a descent here, and we'll get into Seattle. I'm going to stop recording now, and I'll pick it back up right before we start actually getting onto our final approach. Okay, we are approaching Griffey, which is the initial waypoint into the approach phase of our flight today. I wanted to cover something real fast that kind of jacked up a little bit on the beginning here, but I want to cover this, make sure you guys are familiar. So RNP is your required navigational performance. ANP is your actual navigational performance. So my required navigational performance for this part of the approach is 0.30. My actual navigational performance is 0.02. So if I wanted to fly the RNAV RNP approach, I could do that, and that would be just fine. Again, up here you're going to see also required navigational performance and actual navigational performance. What does that mean? Well, this is your vertical. So this is your X and Z axis. I think that's right, and this would be your Y axis. Maybe that's not right. Anyway, basically this is your left and right. This is your up and down. So required navigational performance on the up and down is 400 feet. Actual navigational performance is about 60 feet. And again, you'll see these numbers on the ANP change as you go. And that's perfectly fine, perfectly normal. Again, as long as your ANP is below the RNP, you're good to go with flying the RNP approach. So anyway, I wanted to correct myself on that and that mistake I made earlier in this video. Now, like I said, we are almost on the final approach here. You can see Seattle right off the nose here. And you'll notice that the primary flight display has picked up the RNAV 16 Center Yankee approach. And it's gotten the runway 16 center, the distance from it, LNAV, VNAV, etc. So cool, it's picked up the approach that we're wanting to fly. We should be good to go. Now I'm going to drop to flaps 5 here after this deceleration point and before Magnum, and then I'll drop to flaps 15 before SOD, and then we'll drop flaps to full and gear down for the final arrival. Now, a lot of people may hit the APP button on something like this. That is not required. That is a SOP. I'm not really sure why you would hit the APP button, the approach button. It doesn't really do anything. because if you're flying at VNAV and LNAV, you're going to fly the VNAV LNAV anyway. So I'm not sure why you would hit the APP button. I have heard some people do it. Maybe it's a backup system with ILS or something. I don't know. I don't really know. But I just wanted to broach that topic just a little bit. Let you know that if you see people hit the APP button, that's fine. But it's not required because you're still flying VNAV, LNAV, using those systems still. Adding a little bit of speed brakes here to slow us down to our arrival speed. Now, today is a beautiful day here in Seattle. I could easily fly the visual approach if I wanted to. I'm not going to because, again, I'm trying to demonstrate the VNAV and LNAV, the RNAV navigation approaches, so we'll continue to fly that as we should. All right, so let's bring this down a little bit so I can see a little better. Again, right for Magnum, I want to drop to flaps 5, so we're going to go ahead and start dropping flaps here. And we can see 16 center right there. That's the runway we're heading for. And the aircraft should be pretty good at keeping us online and centered with it using the RNAV approach here. Go and put our taxi light on, saying that we got approved for our should have hit that already, but that's okay. Approved for our landing here into Seattle. Kind of a long landing approval, but there's no other traffic in the area, so no reason why not. I'll retract the speed brakes. Again, if you look, A&P is 0.03, so again, if you wanted to fly the A&P approach, you could. No issue there. Flaps 10. Just add a little bit more drag here to slow us down a tad without having to put out the speed brakes. Now notice that gave me 1,000 to go. That would stop me before I actually reached my final point, right? So before I hit that final point there, I'm actually going to reduce my altitude to 700 feet, so the closest 100 above my minimums, and that's to allow me to actually fly all the way in now. And that is, of course, usually you won't do that until you've gotten approved for your approach, and then of course approved for your landing here. Anyway, before you hit that number, make sure you change that, otherwise you'll get stuck there. All right, we're going to start going for landing configuration here in just a moment. Our final approach speed should be 145 plus 1 correction, so it'll be about 150. All right, gears coming down. Flap 15. We'll wait till the 3.5 DME, so 3.5 miles from the runway, to go flaps full, well not full, but flaps 30 for the landing configuration. All right, 3.5 to go, so going to go flaps 30. Now, important, it says 1,000 to go. Now we are going to actually raise their altitude to our go-around altitude, which is going to be 2,000 feet. And you want to do that before you hit this white line that appears here on your primary flight display, if you guys can see that. So we lost a little bit of visibility here at the end, and that's okay. We got the runway in sight, and we're above minimums, so we are good to continue with the approach and the arrival. So at this point, I could go ahead and take over on the approach manually, but I want to show you guys how close you can actually get with a RNAV LPV approach once you hit these minimums here. All right, so now as long as we have the runway in sight, we could take over complete control of the aircraft and land it. So let's see how we land it. Probably gonna land it a little rough, but usually I like to take over before we get this close. And this runway slopes up some, so it's kind of, you gotta be careful. Otherwise you might slam into the side of the hill there. But anyway, that is how you fly a RNAV LPV approach. Very similar. Any type of RNAV approaches are basically run the same way. Just the minimums are a little different, and the systems that are being utilized can be variations and differences. If you're running an RNP approach, you wouldn't use the WAS, so you wouldn't have to rebuild a WAS channel. It would just be using your aircraft itself for its navigational information. So anyway, I hope this has helped you guys. If you guys have any questions, of course, leave it in the comments down below, or you can go to the Discord channel and ask me the questions there. But anyway, I will see you guys next time up in the sky.